Hello, Slavin. How you been, buddy?
Hey, I'm just fine. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Just hanging in there. We've had the opportunity to get a lot of pretty decent boxing action as this 2020 year
Yeah,
moves towards closure. It's been a crazy year, of course. We all
yeah.
know what's going on. So yeah, it's surprising that we've been able to get some of the pretty decent cards that we have been able to get.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. We've been,
That
yeah, both unlucky and lucky, you can say.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. Um, but yeah, so I know our discussion today, we can jump into some of the things that happened over the course of this weekend.
Hmm.
Today is November 28th or 29th, rather,
29th, yeah.
Sunday, November 29th. Happy Thanksgiving to all since we haven't been on in a while. But yeah, we've had some pretty good boxing that has taken place over this past weekend. So we can start with the big boys,
Yeah,
and that was Daniel Dynamite Dubois, 23-year
yeah,
old heavyweight from the UK, taking on Joe Joyce, a 35-year-old heavyweight from the UK, who was also an Olympic silver medalist. And this was a prime matchup as far as you have Dubois looking to be that next guy at 23 who's been satisfying with all of his fights as far as getting people out of there and looking like he is the goods. And then you have Joe Joyce, who many have questioned. They've called him robotic. They've
yeah.
questioned his movement, things of that nature. But he actually has shown over the last few fights that he has more wrinkles to his game as far as being able to withstand punches and putting himself in
Yes.
a position to get off his heavy jab. And that has helped him see success. So, what were your thoughts on those fights or that fight in particular over the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good fight. Uh, I thought I was not really, of course, most of us were expecting a, a dominant performance by Daniel Dubois or Dubois, whatever you call it. So,
Yeah,
but it turned out, yeah, that Joyce was able to withstand his punches, and because Dubois he landed a lot of, well, quite a lot of, clean shots, but he just wasn't able to really get Joyce in trouble, and then sorry, he got hit with a lot of jabs by Joyce, and so his eye, of course, gradually closed, and yeah, so it was a little bit, I mean, not a little bit, quite unlucky for Dubois because I thought he was the better man. I mean,
yeah,
I think he won, I don't know, like 6 rounds at least, or something like that. While
yeah,
Joyce, he didn't really throw much big shots, and he was quite
yeah.
static, and yeah. But it's just because he's so big and tough and strong that you
There
know,
he is.
he just kind of managed to weather the storm, and
Yeah,
then yeah,
I was with you in terms of I had Dubois winning, and I thought he would win heading into the fight as well. I thought it would be an early win just because I know Dubois, he's not afraid to step out there and exchange, and he'll
hmm
let them off early. And we saw him do that in the second round, and he tagged
yeah,
Joyce a number of times. And I have to give
yeah,
Joyce credit. He has a tough chin, his head in general. He didn't really suffer a lot of
yeah,
damage. There was a little bit of redding around his cheek area, but damage wise, he looked to have gotten out of there without a scratch overall,
mm,
as opposed to, of course, what we know happened with Dubois with his eye completely
yeah,
closing.
yeah. I mean, of course, in the second and third round, it looked like that Joyce was on his way out, and then maybe the fight would end by the fourth, fifth round, because
Yeah,
Dubois was really, really, dominant and landing some good punches, and yeah, but
Mhm.
yeah, I had him winning. My prediction was a seventh round knockout for Dubois. Uh,
Close to it, but the other way around.
yeah, and then that's just in that seventh round, in
Yeah,
the beginning he did land really good
yeah,
punch that kind of rattled Joyce,
yeah.
but then he just stopped and Joyce started to kind of,
Yeah, and I thought
rest
that
him.
was a good showing as far as Dubois as well. He showed that he can move.
Yeah,
That was one of the big questions with him as well, or at least it has been a topic of discussion, like how he can move, him being a big guy, and of
yeah,
course having
yeah.
plotting type power. But he showed that hey, he can move and get in there
Mm,
with the best of them. And really, I guess the story of the fight was pretty much. Joyce's jab, while it's not a sort of overpowering jab from at least the look of it, it's like when it was just hitting the boy, it was definitely effective, and it was pinpointing. It
mm,
was a pinpointed jab that was landing directly on the eye. So if he can do that in terms of fighting other guys as he continue to move forward, then that has to help that he has a pretty solid jab that can cause damage.
yeah. I mean, he's a big boy, of course. So
Yeah.
whenever he hits you, I mean, it's gonna, he's gonna leave a mark, some kind of mark. So, but that's his big problem is he's rather static, and robotic, as you said.
Yeah.
So he doesn't move as well as Dubois, and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what to call him, Dubois or Dubois. I should say,
Oh yeah, Triple D. You got him
yeah,
Triple D.
Triple D. It's easier. So yeah, I mean, because also Triple E is not as big, and but he does move well, yeah, definitely
Yeah.
for a guy who is so buff and
Yeah, yeah, I
still
agree.
a big
And
guy,
yeah,
So
yeah. And so there was no question that, of course, thinking about Frank Warren, uh, there's no question that Dubois was intended to be sort of that cash cow, and they thought that this was going to be a situation where he would come through. I know Frank was keen on letting them
yeah,
battle it out, and of course, the opposite of what I'm sure he would have envisioned or wanted to happen did happen, as far as having this young 23-year-old heavyweight who is
mm,
seemingly on a similar trajectory to that of Anthony Joshua for comparison,
mm,
but now that has been somewhat spoiled, and now he has Joe Joyce, who, in his own rights, is a good fighter. Doesn't have that same sort of it factor that Du-
yeah.
Triple D seems to have. So it'll be interesting moving forward.
Yeah, and he's 35, so
Yeah,
it's not like he's gonna be around for so long. But
yeah,
yeah, I don't know really. But of course, fortunately for Triple D, he's still young. He's so
yeah,
young, so
yeah.
this should not really affect his career. Seriously, of course, he may have to fight a couple of no maybe weaker fighters, but I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
not.
it'll be a true testament to see how he bounces back from this because, yes,
Yeah.
he's only 23. He's already got the win over Nathan Gorman, who was viewed
Mm,
as another guy who had the potential to be up there with the tops of the heavyweight. So there's nothing to be ashamed of in that regard. And
yeah,
hopefully
definitely.
he can bounce back and learn from this and not let it hold him back, and not
Mm,
get that thought whenever he does suffer, say, a cut or something else, not get that thought in his head that he can't continue or won't continue. So we'll see. I did see some reporting online that there may have been an orbital
mm,
bone fracture or something of that nature, but I didn't verify the validity of it. But it definitely was a pretty damaged eye as far as it was completely shut
Yeah,
and seemed to be some slight hematoma there.
yeah. I mean, I've seen some of my friends comment on that on Facebook, and some of them said that the corner should have stopped the fight after the ninth round because
Mm,
he was in such a bad condition, And I kind of agree because that
yeah,
way he would have been gone out with a little bit more of dignity, perhaps,
yeah,
rather than having to take the knee, just kind of quitting in the middle of the ring.
yeah.
So
We know how that will, at least in the world of social media, follow a
yeah,
fighter. So, but he does have the seemingly power and sort of that charisma and the whole makeup to bounce back and
mm,
be successful. Now, as far as Joe Joyce, I know he mentioned Alexander Usyk in the post-fight
mm,
interview, and I must add that I thought that BT Sports Boxing should have done a better job of giving Joe Joyce his time to enjoy his moment. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? He really didn't get to say a ton, but that being said, what do you think about him and Alexander Usyk, or if he moves on and actually fights one of these other top 10 guys? Like say the
Yeah.
likes of Pulev, depending on what happens with Joshua, the likes of Dillian White or Alexander Povetkin, or even some of those fringe guys. Well, he's already
Her,
beat Bryant Jennings, but just some of those
uh,
fringe guys around him, Adam Konatsky or something.
I'd kind of like to see Joyce fight Filip Hrgovic because they are like
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
equal
yeah,
in
yeah.
size, and Hrgovic is not a really fast guy, but I think he's probably a better fighter than Joyce. I mean, I think he'd
And they
most likely
seemingly have a
win.
similar style. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, that's right. And so that would be maybe a more even fight. Perhaps, I don't know. But so far, Hrgovic has pretty much knocked out everybody.
Yeah, he had Sergovich
Case.
has looked good. I think that would be a good test for him, in terms of
Yeah,
that fight.
definitely.
Looking for that
Yeah,
next fight for Hergovich.
a good stepping stone, towards a bigger fight. Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah,
he
I
hasn't
wonder
had
if
that
that.
many fights recently. So
Yeah, I wonder if that's one that Joe Joyce would want, or it seems like Usyk. I know you mentioned the World Series of Boxing or something of that nature. Usyk did defeat uh, Joe Joyce, so there would be some history there for that.
oh
And of
yeah,
course,
right.
Usyk is one of the hot names now here at
Yeah.
heavyweight.
No, I think Usyk is just too fast, too good as a boxer. Technically, I think he would just move around and just outbox Joyce, and yeah,
All
that
right.
would not be such a pretty fight, I think, to watch because you'd
Yeah, I
have
can
this
see that.
huge guy just kind of plodding around while this smaller guy just kind of throws jabs and stuff. Some
Yeah.
some weaker punches maybe because I think definitely Usyk can never stop Joyce. That's just forget
Oh
about
yeah, 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 yeah. I'm with you there. So yeah, that would make it pretty interesting. But I hear you on those sentiments. So yeah, it should be definitely interesting to see what
it.
Frank Warren can pull off. I'm guessing that working something with Eddie probably would be sort of the best bet.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll see.
yeah, definitely. I mean, there are several potential fights that can be made next year in that division. I mean, not only between the very best ones, but also among these guys who are kind of just contenders or fringe contenders.
Yeah,
So
good stuff. All right. Did
yeah.
you happen to yeah, there were some decent fights on the undercard as well, but another fight I wanted to mention, I don't know if you had a chance to check it out, was Gabriel Rosado taking on Danny Jacobs. Were you
Oh
able to
yeah.
check that
No,
out?
no. Unfortunately, no. I didn't get to see.
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's not a fight that you would put it like this: if you never got around to watching it, I think you'd be fine.
Yeah.
There was nothing
But
exciting about the fight. Even
yeah, and I heard some people were claiming that Rosado got robbed or that he should have won or something.
yeah, but yeah, and I've had this discussion with Mel, my spouse, Melissa. She is of the same sentiments that basically neither fighter lived up to the billing, to include Rosado. So we knew
Mm,
Danny Jacobs is the type that we've seen him show some sparks, but generally he will get in there and he will box. He's going to try not to take any damage,
mm,
and he's going to apply his craft, just generally utilizing the skill set that he has because he is a skillful boxer. Now, Gabriel Rosado has been in wars. We've seen him come out and bring it in the past, and it is, of course, has resulted in him getting cut and suffering some stoppages at that top in the elite level. But with all the buildup and seemingly all the animosity that the two had, one would have thought that at least one of them would have showed some sense of urgency. So I didn't see
yeah,
any urgency there from Gabriel Rosado from an overall standpoint. There was definitely none there from Jacobs, but I think it's twofold since each had issues, and I'm kind of in an agreement that Jacobs didn't necessarily have to take this fight with Rosado, and I wanted to see Rosado press him more to try to bring it out, but he chose to box, and Jacobs for that matter didn't
mm,
do anything extraordinary outside of just some of the standard stuff. A lot of jabbing, threw a few hits there, but they barely threw a ton of punches from an overall standpoint. I think when the fight ended, neither had landed 100 punches or more. They were all under 100. They were both under 100
yeah,
punches. And so I think that was the story of the fight itself. And a draw would have been fitting if it had gone in the opposite direction. I understand. Really, there was no true winner, I think, just overall from between the both of them. And it was sort of a bad fight given the public animosity the two showed, and that being a catalyst for the promo that it was going through.
yeah. That's just an old trick now. Already kind of getting worn out, like this fake animosity and yeah. But I guess both guys are not fighting at their best weight anymore. So it's
Yeah.
168, right? So
Yeah, it's 168.
yeah, so I guess Rosado was best at 154 and Jacobs at 160. So
Yeah, but Jacob said that the weight was a problem at 160,
yeah,
and 168 is more in his lane, but
yeah, but
he's yet to show it overall. We've only gotten this Rosado fight and, of course, the fight with Chavez. Neither
mm,
of the two has shown us exactly what he will be at 168 or if he'll actually be a true player at 168. There were
mm,
discussions of him taking on potentially Billy Joe Saunders, which could be an interesting fight.
yeah, definitely. I'd like to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it could be interesting and it also could be boring.
yeah, that too. Because if Jacobs fights like he did last night or whenever,
Yeah,
and Saunders is a technician too. So
yeah, it could make for something. It could make for a
yeah,
pretty boring fight. But there are others at 168, so we'll
yeah,
see.
definitely.
Maybe he should take on the likes of an Uskadagui. I think he's at
Oh yeah,
168. I
yeah,
think that would be a decent fight for Jacob, someone who I think he would beat, of course, but someone who would actually come forward and throw punches to see how he reacts to
yeah.
being hit at that weight. Uh, truly hit at that weight, with someone who actually has been at
Mm.
168 for a good period. So,
Yeah, and he's a tall guy. I believe that
yeah.
he's 6'2" or something like that.
Yes, yes, he is, and I think he would be a good barometer for Jacobs. But we'll see, though. He may want a big fight now, and
Yeah,
might want one of those top guys, and sort of we'll see where he goes. If he wins or loses his next, well, it depends. But if he loses his next big fight, then it'll be
Mm.
interesting to see what where he goes from there. Because he said he's fighting for legacy at this point.
Yeah, he's had a very special career. I mean, very unusual. You know, when
Yeah,
he had his first chance to win the world title, he got knocked out
yeah,
suddenly. Then he had this kind of cancer, was it? That he,
yeah. It was a cancer, a
uh,
tumor on the spine or something of that nature.
so, and then he just made a really incredible comeback, really, kind of, yeah,
Yeah, I
almost,
agree.
yeah, his nickname is like Miracle Man or something, I believe.
Yes, yes, definitely. It was yeah, it's a testament to him coming back. I like him as a fighter, but
Yeah,
that
me
fight
too.
definitely wasn't one that will stick out as far as what he's done thus far. It's more of a stain than anything.
Yeah, he's a very talented fighter, but yeah, maybe I don't know, maybe this whole thing with the COVID has also affected him. I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, it could have
Yeah,
very much as far as training. But yeah, so
yeah,
time will
that's
tell
right.
where he goes. Now the co-feature to that was this Kazakh fighter. I can't think of his first name, but last name
Oh yeah,
Yelyusinov, and he took
Danya.
out
Yeah,
he took out Julius Ndongo, yeah, the
yeah, that was
former
very.
champion.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I didn't really think it would end so soon, but I guess Indongo is now 37, I believe. So
Yeah, he is.
he's definitely kind of bottomed out kind of fast.
Yeah, I thought it. Yeah, and for that matter, I thought it would end pretty soon because of the fact that Ndungo at this age, him being 37, but
Yeah.
that aside, just at that elite level, he doesn't seem to have the chin for it as far as we saw what
Mm,
happened, even though Crawford got him out with a body shot at
yeah.
140. There's no question that had the fight continued, if he were able to rise, he was going to go down again. And then Regis Prograis pretty much blasted through him in quick fashion.
Yeah.
And now Yellow Usinov did the same thing, and this is him being at 147. He did the most of his work at 140 as far as being the unified champion. So
Yeah.
I just feel like, yeah, his chin is not going to get any better at 37. So his sort of period is past, and I thought that he can be proud of it, coming from Namibia, being able to become a unified champion at the top stage.
Yeah.
At that elite stage, that's nothing to be ashamed about there. But yeah, he's gonna
Mm,
definitely have to consider what he wants to do in the future. And I don't think that hanging around or sticking around at 147, especially if he's intending to continue to get big fights, is going to be good for him.
yeah, definitely not. I mean, his problem is that he kind of started getting big fights when he was already in his 30s.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and he just had he defeated that guy Troyanovsky in one round.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then he beat Ricky Burns, who was already, not so, I mean,
Yeah,
on the
Ricky
slide.
on sort of the downside as
Yeah.
well.
So that was his claim to fame. And
Yeah,
then came Terence Crawford, who just, yeah.
yeah. So it's a good name for Yellow Usinov, who, for the most part, he looks to have the goods. And at
Yeah.
147, of course, that's a rich division.
Mm,
So we'll see where he goes from here. And now I would like to see him with the likes of, say, a Virgil Ortiz or even Jerron Ennis. But how those could be made, I'm not sure of whether those fights can be made, especially well, Golden Boy is with the zone, so Virgil Ortiz is, he fights on the zone
yeah.
in Yellow Usanov's match room. I'm wondering if something could be worked out there, but then again, maybe Golden Boy wants to more so fast track Ortiz to a title as opposed to throwing him in with the guy like Yellyusinov, which is a fight he could very much lose in my opinion, just given what I've seen between the two fighters. So
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what he does from here because Yellyusinov is 29 himself, so he turned pro late, had a big
yeah,
amateur background, so he
yeah.
wants to get to
Many
a
of
title
them.
quickly too.
Yeah, I think many former Soviet fighters turn pro rather late, and that's a shame.
Yeah,
But because they first have a long career as amateur
yeah,
amateurs, and they turn pro after they win most or try to win all that they can, at that level, and
yeah,
then yeah.
yeah. That
I
is,
mean, those guys from the Central Asia, also, I mean,
yeah,
Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan,
yes.
they are so really kind of tough, dangerous fighters.
Yes, they are. They have a farm system seemingly going now that is really top tier. So you have a lot of good guys that are coming
Yeah.
out of there, and they're pretty much ready for title contention. At least some of them within
Mm.
only a few fights, which
Yeah.
has changed the game in a sense and how we think of some of these top amateurs who in previous years though it wasn't always the case, but in previous years when we had these guys that were top amateurs thinking about the US and all, and even with the UK, they've been brought on slowly.
Yeah.
They typically kind of had at least like 19, 18, 19, 20 fights before they're even ready for, say, one of the top 20, top 15 guys, you know.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
these
Yeah.
guys are coming in. They may have two or three fights against just some guy that is out there, and they're ready to jump
Yeah.
in with contenders.
Yeah, it's a different mentality, definitely. I mean, yeah, they are, sorry, I guess very confident, these guys from, yes,
Yeah, and
former.
they have shown that they can do what they do. You know, they have shown that
Yeah.
they can really cause some ruckus when they do step in there. Even for those that have attempted those big fights and lost, it wasn't it wasn't a case where they didn't necessarily give that sort of top fighter or whomever they were facing all the problems they could handle.
Mm.
So yeah, it makes for an interesting sort of future because I just think as you continue to see these guys propping up and really being mainstays in the sport at sort of like that global level, we'll see more and more, just jump in and I think it's good for the sport as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because before, like 20, still, I mean, even like 15 years ago, there were a few guys from those countries that were fighting, but not that many, really. So, but
Yeah,
even then,
I
yeah,
think the
yeah,
notion of a European style has pretty much been thrown out of the window at this point because these
yeah,
guys are
that's
just
very
good.
good. Yeah,
Yeah, I think the world is, for the most part, caught up. Typically, UK being big mainstays, the US,
mm,
of course, and Mexico. There's another one that's sort of where
yeah,
you typically see a lot of guys come from. But yeah, just generally, yeah, at this world stage, this global level, yeah, a lot of these guys are right there. I mean, it's pretty much
yeah,
even billing at this point.
yeah, definitely. I think they're uh, before I mean, most of these East Europeans, they came to Germany first, but now
Yeah,
it's mostly USA because now German boxing is no longer what it used to be. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You're
so
right. I think about that. The likes
mm,
of there were a lot of guys that were fighting in Germany or out of
yeah,
Germany.
because Germany they have quite a good uh, relations with both Russia and yeah those countries. I know that for a fact.
Cool.
So
All
yeah,
right. Good stuff. Hey, what other thing? I saw that this guy, now I don't know his name if I'm gonna get this right or not, but Chapyeon
Oh
Munsari or
yeah,
whatever. This
yeah,
guy out of Thailand, he finally took a loss, so he's 54-1 now.
yeah.
I
That
didn't see
was
the fight though.
amazing. Yeah. Or he was also known as one hangman Ayotin, so we can call him that. That's easier.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that. I
Yeah, he
hadn't.
was. Yeah, he
Yeah,
lost. Yeah, that was a big surprise, but I guess it was bound to happen sometime.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, his I had looked into him and I only watched some highlights and things of that nature, but his record was basically littered with a bunch of opponents that no one would know anything about for the most part,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
everything in Thailand.
yeah, you had this guy who fought in the 90s and early 20th century, I mean 21st century, Samson Dutch boy Jim. So he kind
Oh,
of had a
I don't know him.
he retired also like at 52-0, but he never fought a really famous guy ever.
All
So
right,
he held some kind of paper title, made like 40 defenses of that
no,
title. So
that
it,
is funny. That is
just
funny. Yeah, you see that. Yeah, it's crazy. That reminds me of when you get these guys like Yuri Boy Campos or Campus
yeah,
or something like that. You have these built up records, and then when they get in there with an elite fighter,
yeah,
they
yeah.
get
He
blown out.
stopped being relevant around, yeah, I don't know, 2003 or
That
something.
is funny.
Yeah,
All right, cool. Well, another topic we wanted to cover was fighters who are making comebacks,
yeah,
just that whole world of comeback. As we know, when a boxer says, I'm retired, you can never truly take it too seriously. There have been a
yeah,
few who've actually really stayed away, like Lennox Lewis. I thought that he would potentially come back at some point. He didn't.
mm,
Thus far, yeah, Vitaly Klitschko, he looks like he's not going to come back, and now he's seemingly successful on the political side of things.
yeah,
Uh, Vladimir Klitschko, there were mutterings here, at least up until last year, of him potentially coming back. Didn't happen. Andre Ward, he stayed retired, and then going back, there's a litany of others. But of
yeah,
course, the most high profile of recent memory and recent being yesterday is Iron Mike Tyson
yeah,
at 54 years old taking on Roy Jones Jr., Captain Hook, who was 51 years old at this
mm,
particular time in what was deemed an exhibition matchup that really generated a ton of interest. And that's not just in the boxing world, but in mainstream media and mainstream local media, just across multiple facets. So this wasn't just centered to the boxing world. You had the likes of TMZ even reporting things as the fight was going on. Now, what are your thoughts on just that comeback? And were you able to catch the actual exhibition?
no, no, unfortunately. But yeah,
No.
I mean, I read that Tyson was, I mean, should have won, but he
Yeah.
was. I guess the rules were such that there were not gonna be any result like a winner. I mean,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah. I
just an
think
exhibition. So
Yeah, that's how they
uh,
were treating it. So they're intended to not have any knockdowns. If there was going to be a cut or anything that would stop it. So they wanted it to pretty much, they wanted them to stay on their feet and handle it
yeah,
sort of in that exhibition sparring style.
yeah. So I kind of thought that maybe Tyson would, I mean, be in better shape because Roy Jones had been fighting for so long,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
suffered quite many devastating knockouts, and you
yeah,
know.
he did. I was actually
So,
working on an article for 86 Boxing right now where I'm just going to touch on the event and I'm pointing out the fact that both of these fighters had a pretty sharp decline in their professional career. But
yeah,
yeah, it's interesting.
yeah, that's true. I think Mike, he kind of also he fought too long. I thought he should have retired maybe, well, at least after that uh, Clifford at the end fight, all
Oh
right,
yeah,
he got that last knockout, in
yeah,
one round. So that should have been his, like, the end, like, for him going out, in a good way.
yeah,
But
yeah. It would have.
unfortunately, it didn't go. It didn't happen. So he got two beatings before he decided to
Yeah,
call it quits. Against
yeah,
guys that he should, really in his prime would have, like, knocked out in 1 or 2
yeah,
rounds.
yeah. He went out in an embarrassing manner, and he was clearly no longer in the type of boxing shape that he needed to be in, even competing with those types of guys.
Yeah,
And he
yeah,
was
it
solely
was.
relying on his power punches.
Yeah, that's right. I know against Danny Williams, he first round he kind of had a good round, hurt him with some punches, but then after a couple of rounds, he just didn't. He just lost steam and he got uh, beaten up, and yeah.
Yeah.
So
There's a sad state of affairs. Well, in this
yeah,
fight with Jones, or this exhibition with Jones, I thought that for what it's worth, it was successful. The event in its entirety, in my opinion, was very successful. There was a lot of interest and buzz generating. There were a
yeah,
ton of there was a the fight was trending on, for instance, Twitter. I know as far as their top 10 topics, the bulk of it was surrounding this event and these fights, because you had this basketball player, Nate Robinson, who got
yeah,
knocked out by Jake Paul in devastating fashion. But
yeah,
but yeah, Tyson, hey, he looked like a bit slower and older version of the Tyson of old. Of course,
yeah,
his style he's got that patented peekaboo style, and he was
yeah.
doing that and working it. And we even saw Roy
Morning,
Jones try to go
yeah.
back to his days of throwing the no lookers and all that. So I thought it turned out to be entertaining. Of course, it went all 8 rounds, and you could tell that Tyson was most certainly the more powerful of the two, and Tyson threw some pretty decent
Yeah.
body shots at times that you could see that he really put a little something behind him. And Roy, he did his best. He took them, and hey, it turned out to be a good clash of styles, I would say, just because these were two very different types of fighters
Mm,
coming up. But I think
yeah.
it was a success.
That's good. It's only a shame that there couldn't be, like, a lot of crowd there.
Oh yeah, that would have
It's
made it even better.
such an such an irony. Finally, Mike Tyson comes back to the ring, and there's almost nobody. Nobody's allowed to come.
Yeah, I know. It is so crazy. It is
Yeah,
crazy thinking about that. So yeah, and but they did an excellent job with the production, and I think just thinking about the entire year, this was one of the better just overall cards. Now I know that of course there are those who are sort of detractors just because, in a sense, when you have the likes of Jake Paul and such fighting, it is more
yeah,
of a spectacle. It's not the real deal. But I think that also brings in an audience that boxing typically wouldn't see, even if for those moments or those particular events, there are a lot of casual fans who tune in. And yes, you can expect some to have sort of outlandish takes, thinking, hey, Jake Paul can beat, some of these actual professional boxers who've been doing it for forever.
yeah,
But that aside, I think it's entertaining for the sport. And if you view it in sort of from that standpoint, if you think of it like the Tyson Jones fight as an exhibition, which have been coming, especially more so in the earlier years of boxing, if you view it from that lens, then I think that you can have an appreciation for an event as such.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you had, like, Joe Frazier doing this with his son Marvis. I know, after he quit, of course.
Okay.
He
Yeah.
boxed a few exhibitions, and that's just fine. I mean, it doesn't always have to be about people getting knocked out, or
Yeah, and that and sort of slapstick type comedy, and even when I say exhibitions, you had those, and then sort of slapstick type stuff from a
yeah,
comedic perspective have always been a part of boxing. You've had Ali taking on this like giant from China or something like that.
oh,
You've had the likes of that. You've had sort of wrestling situations where
yeah,
boxing and wrestling has crossed over, and I actually am fond of seeing more of these exhibitions because I feel like they do help to continue to generate interest for the sport. And with guys like Tyson, he was like one of the most famous people in the world at one point, and still is for the most part.
yeah.
So you can expect it.
He's huge. I mean, still huge star. I mean, I watched the ad for that fight on TV,
Hmm.
here, and it was like they showed him for like 30 seconds and Jones for maybe 10 seconds,
Yeah, yeah,
even
yeah. That
less.
is funny. Yeah, yeah. This is definitely all of Tyson's ability. He's showing that his name carries value. It'll be interesting to see what the numbers come in at. I ended up getting it. This pay-per-view was back. It was at $49.99, so basically $50. And this is more
Oh,
reminiscent of the time when boxing was, or when Tyson was actually boxing, when pay-per-views
yeah.
were in that $45 range, basically somewhere in or around there.
Mm,
So I think that the numbers might end up being pretty well once it's all said and done, and we get back what they actually did on that night, because I know that there was a ton of interest there. I wasn't even going to get the pay-per-view at first, but then I said, what the heck, when am I ever gonna get the opportunity to purchase a Tyson pay-per-view and check him out?
yeah,
This is like random. He's one of my favorite fighters, or my favorite fighter, thinking about it from an all-time standpoint. But yeah,
yeah,
so I just had to jump on the opportunity.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was so special because he was a small heavyweight at a time when there were less and less,
Yeah,
especially very successful small heavyweights,
yeah,
So,
definitely.
the last small heavyweight who was so successful, I guess, well, Joe Frazier.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He probably was the last one really who had that type of name that extended beyond the sport.
Yeah. So they have always been like a very special thing, a curiosity, small heavyweights, because there are so few, of course, especially today, there are so few of them.
Yeah,
And when you got guys who are like basketballers,
yeah.
look
It takes.
more like,
Yeah, you're right. It takes a special type of fighter to be one of the smaller heavyweights and actually
yeah,
have the opportunity to be dominant in some regards. So for him, Frazier, and saw it, of course, more in the early days of boxing, in the early 1900s, as we moved forward from there, you saw
yeah,
more, there were probably just more boxers that were out there during those times by comparison to today. While boxing is very much a large sport, some people view it as sort of this niche or cliche type of sport, but really it's a global sport. I mean, you got people
mm,
boxing everywhere, and I think that yeah, as time has gone on now, yeah, we're seeing more of these bigger guys. But if there were to be fighters, say like Tyson, that were to crop up here in the next
yeah,
couple of years or something, I think it would generate a lot of buzz, especially if he's knocking out people in that fashion, because all of the top guys are pretty much bigger guys, and that would make for interesting matchups to see something like that.
yeah, definitely. I think generally boxing has become bigger in the recent years. I mean,
Yeah,
Now you got even super models training
Oh yeah,
boxing to stay fit. I mean, you never saw that in
yeah.
playing
You're
tennis.
right.
Yeah.
You're right. They have changed the dynamic. I remember doing an amateur event like last year, I believe it was, and there was and on this event there were a couple of Redskin cheerleaders that were boxing each other.
Oh
It was
yeah.
funny.
Yeah,
It was
there are
just
more.
funny.
Yeah, I think also there are more female boxers, or anyway, female boxers that get paid more now, and
Yeah,
they just get more interest than they did before. I mean, the female boxing in general, before, I mean, nobody really watched that except
yeah.
the women. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, definitely. And I think it helps the sport,
yeah,
with stuff like this. So yeah, hopefully that interest continues to grow, and this Tyson event, I think that's a start, and we're going to see more probably
mm,
doing similar things. As long as it's treated as an exhibition in similar fashion, then I think it's good for the sport. But we also have the likes of Oscar De La Hoya, who says he wants to come back in official capacity, and the opponent that he wants is Triple G, Gennady Golovkin.
oh,
What are your
wow.
thoughts on that?
I think that's just, he's dreaming. That's my
Yeah,
opinion. I think he would get murdered. I mean, even if Triple G is no longer what he used to be, he's still a lot younger. I mean, 9 years younger, and
and 9 years
he's
more
still,
active
yeah,
and
that's right.
in shape.
So, and I mean, he's really a natural middleweight, and he's always fought
Yeah,
middleweight. And Oscar started as super featherweight, so even
yeah,
though
yeah,
now he is he's a real middleweight, or maybe even
yeah,
more.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that would be good.
And yeah, and he never fought at middleweight, even though he fought at
Yeah,
154.
or
Yeah,
had two fights just, but when he lost to
or there were
Bernard,
catch weights. Was
yeah,
him and
oh yeah,
Hopkins a
that's
catch
right,
weight? Was him and Hopkins a catch
156.
weight?
Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
sure. I know the Hopkins fight was, but the Sturm
Oh,
fight,
Felix
I mean,
Sturm. Okay, yeah. So
yeah,
Felix Sturm was, and I thought he lost that fight.
yeah, I
Uh,
think so too. I thought so too. Yeah,
he didn't hurt Sturm either, so I don't know
yeah.
what makes him think that he would be so successful against Golovkin at
Noah
160.
Stern was not a puncher either, so that was
Yeah,
kind of lucky for him. Because he
yeah.
ate quite a lot of leather in that fight. So
Yes, he did. He did. And yeah, and to think the way Oscar went out with a smaller man in Pacquiao taking him out,
yeah,
even though Oscar had to come down to 147, that certainly took its toll on him. You could tell. But
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
he made his bed and sort of had to lie in it. So yeah, I think it's well wishing, and I don't think Triple G would take the fight either, because just given the fact that we
Yeah,
know that damage would be done.
yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah,
So I was also just looking back, kind of just going over the history, as I mentioned, of fighters making comeback. The big one that came to mind was Joe Louis when he took on Rocky Marciano.
oh,
Louis had retired in 1949, March 1st. And then, of course, we know the story of him having a ton of issues as far as taxes. And that
oh,
led him to making a comeback in 1950. Yeah,
wow.
1950. But he
Was
hadn't fought since 1958, or
I think
1948, rather.
1951 it was when he fought Rocky.
Oh
um,
yeah, but his first comeback fight was against
1950. Oh yeah, right.
yeah 1950 against after he had officially retired, because he hadn't fought in 1958 or since 1948 rather. I
Oh
keep
yeah,
saying 1958,
yeah,
but he had beat Jersey Joe Walcott, and then he retired from there. Then he came back. Edric Charles had the belt at that particular point because he beat Jersey Joe, and so his first fight, he lost to Ezzard Charles, who, of course, is an all-time great legend of the sport as well. But he's really started at I want to say middleweight or somewhere around there. So
Yeah.
he wasn't a big
Okay, it
heavyweight.
was not.
Yeah, from what I gathered in things that I've read and such, he only went to heavyweight to get bigger fights because, of
Yeah.
course, heavyweight is always, at least prior to, I would say, this period from around 2005 to 2000 and well, you could say up to now, but heavyweight had always been sort of that big money generating division,
Yeah,
and we're seeing
definitely.
more of that now because Tyson Fury actually was and I was surprised he was the highest paid athlete of 2019, and that was
Wow.
partially due to Canelo having only fought once,
Oh,
because Canelo has been the big money generator. And we know
mm,
Anthony Joshua, typically he is another big money generator as well, but Fury, he made his comeback and he was able to capture a lot of funding.
yeah,
Um,
that's right.
yeah, but yeah, the reason that Joe Louis Rocky Marciano fight stood out because, of course, that is this famous last fight, in which 37-year-old Joe Louis, that was clearly only fighting for the money at this point. He was knocked out in sad fashion, where he actually was knocked out of the ring or
Yeah,
through the ropes at least, and people essentially had to help him up. And you had this fighter with a sort of glorious history at heavyweight, who had to go out in that fashion. And Rocky Marciano, of course, it definitely helps him, and it helped his sort of billing and the mystique surrounding him, that he was able to take out the likes
yeah,
of Joe Louis, who, while he wasn't the same Joe Louis as far as that prime version that all had remembered, but he was still, I guess, somewhat serviceable because he had racked up a number of wins. It's just that when he was at that top level again, uh, yeah, it just showed he wasn't able to get past Charles, and then by the time he got to Marciano, Marciano was blowing through a lot of guys, and he was able to do the same to Joe Louis.
yeah. Yeah, I think I read that Marciano said that he really hated doing that, of course, because Joe was his idol, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So of course it couldn't have been very easy, but that's boxing, Sometimes you just have to. I mean, it's the same thing with when Larry Holmes fought Muhammad
Oh yeah.
Ali. So
Oh yeah. That's another one.
yeah,
Yeah, wanted to discuss as well. Well, how about we jump into that? Because
yeah,
Ali had retired. I don't know if many remember, in 1978, and he
yeah,
did make a comeback. And this is even though he was pretty much already slowed down, and he already had signs of the toll of the sport on him at that
mm,
particular time. But he decided to try and be in triumph. He wanted to capture the title for what would it be, a fourth time, if I recall, or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Fourth time.
He was the first to capture it three times.
Mm,
And this would have been breaking, a record that he had. And we all know, those that have sort of seen even the highlights and such, that it was pretty much a shell of Ali that was in that ring.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, he was just not able to get anything, any kind of offense going, and Holmes was in his prime, so
Yeah.
that was also another
And you
factor.
all and you also add in the fact that Larry Holmes was a longtime sparring partner of his.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. I believe I seen the documentary. I know he was his sparring partner before the Foreman fight. I
oh
don't know.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know
yeah,
when he started being. Yeah, I
yeah.
know
So he
Holmes
had
turned pro in '73. So yeah,
okay,
and that
yeah,
fight was in '74, of course. The Ali
yeah. So
Foreman.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, and the Holmes fight was in 1980. So
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
October or something. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and Holmes, hey, he knew what Ali had to offer, and just naturally, went in there
yeah,
to
but
box. I've heard in interviews and stuff when he talks about it, he wanted the fight stopped.
yeah,
He didn't want Ali to continue to just take the punishment that he was taking
mm,
early on, and he said it was sort of painful for him to be handing this beating down to him.
yeah. It must have been afterwards, that when the fight was stopped and Holmes went and kind of embraced Ali and told him that he loved him. And then Ali told him, "Oh, but why did you beat me up like that?" Then so such a typical Ali response.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had heard of that one. That is funny. Yeah, yeah, and that was a sort of motivation that sparked uh or not Muhammad Ali, but Mike Tyson
Tyson, yeah,
when he took on an old past it Larry Holmes himself.
yeah, 1988. Yeah, I've seen it fight several times. It was,
Yeah,
yeah, very, very, very brutal. Yeah,
yeah, he was taking some heavy shots, and it's crazy.
yeah. And then
Uh,
when he got knocked out, and people jumped into the ring, it was like they feared he was dead. Like almost so
yeah, he
many
was
people stormed the ring. Just
he was laid out cold.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's one thing. Yeah, of course, Tyson's a bigger puncher than Larry Holmes, and
yeah, definitely.
yeah, the contrast of that sort of beating that he put on Holmes to that of Ali, you know, it's
Yeah.
Holmes. He was a great boxer, had an excellent jab and all of that stuff. But
Mm,
I wouldn't say he was a huge power guy. But
no,
no, with Ali or with Tyson, yeah, he was legitimately taking thudding shots that
no. Yeah,
looked as though they were gonna take his head off, essentially.
yeah. That guy could bang.
Oh yes, without a doubt. Um, Another one I had thought of was Sugar Ray Robinson. Of course, he was a great fighter.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of his good work we didn't even have on video. I think he started at lightweight, and
Mm,
and he continued to rack up wins as then moved up to welterweight, so on, and he ended up retiring in 1952 after making a bid at Joey Maxim for the light heavyweight title of the world. And this is a fight that is famously known for the referee had to be changed in the 10th round because one of the refs was overcome by the heat. And then,
oh,
uh, of course, Sugar Ray Robinson, who was winning the fight at that particular time, couldn't answer the bell for the 13th because he was dealing with the heat exhaustion or whatever because it
yeah.
was a hot day over 100 degrees and this was an outside fight, of course. So he retired after that fight in 1952. Um, but yeah, of course, you know, whenever fighters retire, it all depends on how your financial situation is because he made a comeback in 1955.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many have retired and then just unretired in a matter of 2, 3 years or even
Yeah,
less. And that's because maybe they just realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. My finances aren't so good, or
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and that was the case with him. I've done a lot of studying up on him, but there's still so much I need to know on him or to learn. But yeah, he had prior to that point, he had been one of those guys who his uh his skill set and just his popularity allowed him to be out there and stay from within reach of what was predominantly a more mafia controlled type of fight game at that particular time. And he was able to, of course, get the middleweight titles and all that stuff
yeah,
during his time prior to this retirement. But at this point, yeah, when he made this comeback, it was strictly for the money, from what I gathered. It really wasn't just for the competition. He had bills that he had to pay, and of course, fighting was his trade. He tried the thing that a lot of top famous boxers do, which is go into showbiz after retirement in some capacity. But of course, that
Yeah.
didn't quite work out, and you can't generate the type of funds that or he couldn't generate the type of funds that he was getting when he was actually fighting, and that led him to come back. But it did give the world his 4 fights with Gene Fullmer, as far as noteworthy, and then Carmen Basilio,
Yeah.
the 2 fights with him. And he ended up fighting until he was 45, which is an advanced
Wow.
age now, but just thinking about that particular time and the sheer number of fights that fighters had,
Yeah.
it's even beyond 45, I would presume, as far as his body.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, back then they had like, well, one fight each week or something.
Yeah, it's craziness.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, he had to, and they end up staying around for a long period of time, and he actually, you know, it's famously quoted him taking down uh, Henry Armstrong, which was a guy he looked up to and sort of an idol of his in the boxing world.
mm,
And Henry Armstrong was past his prime when he took on Sugar Ray Robinson as well. And Robinson didn't want to do that fight, but it was something to paraphrase that uh, Henry Armstrong had told him that if you're my friend, then you'll fight me. This is how I make money, you know. So he
yeah,
ended up taking that fight, and Henry Armstrong was an all-time great as well. And yeah,
yeah,
it's just one of those stories of fighters just staying well past their prime, you know.
yeah. Sometimes it's just about securing your future, or in retirement, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's not like they really think they have a chance to win or something. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's for the
and
money simply, and yeah.
yeah, and that's even though, yeah, he did have a pretty decent post retirement run, but yeah, I'm sure that, yeah, it took a toll on his body.
Mm,
And
yeah,
then it made me think
definitely.
of some of the guys like Floyd Mayweather, who's of course retired multiple times and
Yeah.
made comebacks. I think some of them have been for financial reasons. Others may have been for wanting to get that sort of limelight and publicity that he previously had. But yeah, he made his first retirement after defeating Oscar De La Hoya, and then ultimately he came from that, took on Marquez and so
Mm,
forth, and ended up retiring
yeah.
again, or seemingly retiring again. And of course, we know he last fought against was it Connor, or was it that exhibition or sort of crazy fight with the Japanese kickboxer?
Yeah, that's the one. I don't know what the guy's called, but nobody does actually.
Yeah, on Risen or something like that. But
Yeah, but
yeah, so that was one of the things he did. And of course, his name continues to pop up year after year with, oh, he potentially is coming back. Oh, he could do this. There's people
yeah.
still talking about Mayweather Pacquiao. And it's just like, come on, we need to just let that rest at this point.
Yeah, it seemed to me maybe he would just get sick of, journalists kind of questioning him, especially Larry Merchant, that
Oh, yeah.
he tended to be kind of condescending. I saw that interview after the Carlos Baldomir fight.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So where Larry Merchant says, "Oh, you call yourself a warrior and you say you are entertaining," but he says, "Do you think that this was entertaining?" He got a point like there were people booing and leaving, and then he of course Mayweather got very angry. You're
Yeah.
just yeah, you
Just the
just started
commentators.
saying you're just
Yeah.
yeah. it was very funny.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. Larry used to definitely go at guys. He was funny.
Yeah,
He
I
grew
mean,
on
he's not.
me. Larry Merchant did.
Yeah, he's not a guy like to kind of just sing praises, of a
Yeah,
fighter,
without a doubt.
no
And
matter how big he is, of course. So
yep, yeah, it led to one of the most famous exchanges, of course, between those two in the ring after the
yeah,
uh,
Victor.
Victor Ortiz fight.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was the one. That was really. I mean, when Floyd kind of he seemed to lose control totally. He just went crazy. Oh, you don't know this and that. They should fire you. I
oh
don't know if
yeah,
I can curse here, but he was very
yeah.
very nasty.
Yeah, yeah, it was one of those. It was
Yeah,
a memorable exchange for sure. Yeah, so yeah, Floyd. Yeah, he had an interesting career. There were definitely some fights that would have been cool to have seen that we never got the chance to
yeah.
see. Even the Pacquiao fight at the time it was what didn't have that same muster
Mm.
or luster that it would
Yeah,
have had had it been in 2012 or something like that,
it was
2012,
far from
2011.
yeah far from what they expected, but I think Bob Arum he knew what would happen because I
Yeah.
seen an interview from 2009 where he says, "I know this will be a stinking fight," he says, and that will
Hmm.
be like a hunter chasing a deer, and it was, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Speaking of that, speaking of Bob Arum, actually, have you seen the latest between the turmoil of he and Terrence Crawford? They're a little back and forth now with them having issues.
no, no, I haven't heard of
Oh
that.
yeah, this is related to some comments Bob made. So prior to Crawford taking this Brook fight, he had received a contract for the offer from Bob prior to Teofimo Lopez taking on Vasily Lomachenko
Oh yeah,
and Crawford and his team. I guess they sat on the contract for 2 weeks, I believe it was, and they didn't sign until like day of or either even during the actually it was during the fight between Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez. So
oh,
Bob was pissed off about the fact that they didn't get a chance to promote it. So they did
oh
mention
yeah.
it during the broadcast, but they weren't able to promote it in any of the ESPN's fights spots prior to that fight, that Lopez and Lomachenko fight, which of course generated a lot of interest. Um,
Mhm.
and so from there, we heard rumblings, and this was through the Athletic, like that there were issues, and it stemmed around, I guess, someone leaked the contract or whatever to Bob or to the Athletic, that Mike Coppinger guy or whatever the heck. Um, and basically, there was some clause or something in there that said that, but or maybe in addition to that contract, but basically there was something that said that Bob would offer Terrence Crawford $1 million if he didn't provide him with the offer um, to fight Errol Spence in 2020, which of course is not happening, and Spence is about to fight Garcia.
Yeah.
So it led to some back and forth, and Crawford complaining about not being able to get the big fights until then. Errol, he was interviewed or whatever, and he said that he, with the amount of money that he's lost on Crawford, he could build a house in Malibu or something like that. And then there was a back
Yeah.
forth, and Aaron says he's completely done. He's not dealing with Crawford. He's just letting Todd Dubois, who is the president of Top Rank, he's just letting
Oh
him
yeah.
deal with Crawford and his team. He's no longer going to, I guess, interact with Crawford.
Yeah, that's a kind of tricky situation,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, Bob Arum is like 80 something now, and
Mm.
he definitely doesn't have the the nerves. So, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, anymore to deal with such stuff. It's obvious. He's have to deal with a lot of fighters over the years, of course.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
and they can be pretty tough. I mean, stubborn or hard to deal with also. So,
Yes, just certainly, and you had some leave. Pacquiao left and didn't sign with them. I know Pacquiao was having a lot of issues on the tax end, I guess, even though he had a ton of those big fights, and he was
oh
at
yeah,
one point, at worst, the second most popular guy in the sport. He might have been, actually, I think he was the most popular guy, even
yeah,
during that initial run with one that Mayweather Pacquiao fight. Yeah, I think Pacquiao's sort of mystique was at an all-time high. It might have been even greater than that of Mayweather's.
yeah.
But yeah, he ran into a lot of tax issues, I guess. So I guess this
Oh,
wasn't handled well by, I don't know who to blame, maybe his team or whatever. But yeah, he's now still fighting, of course, and he's still a pretty good fighter. And
yeah,
we know that money is the main motivation at this point for him, even.
yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing that he still can fight like he does, and when he lost to, even though whatever you think who really won that fight, but when he lost to Jeff Horn, I kind of thought, all right, that's it, he's finished. And then he
Mhm.
beats like Keith Thurman, and yeah,
Yeah. I
who
would
else?
I was
Yeah,
thinking about speaking of that, I was gonna shoot you a text telling you, just face it, Slavin Joe Jeff Horn is not a good fighter.
who who said that?
No, I was gonna send you a text saying that
Oh
just thinking
yeah,
about
yeah,
when he fought Tim Zoo. The
yeah,
thought was that he probably would have done pretty decent. I don't know. I guess he was in there, but Tim Zoo was able to get him out of there.
yeah. That was a little bit surprising to me. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff freaking Horn, the unlikely champion.
Yeah, just one of those guys, there are a few of those who kind of had scored a big upset, and then after that they just did nothing more or less.
He's like
Almost.
Cinderella Man 2000, the 2010s. He's
Oh,
Cinderella Man.
oh, you mean that
Like
guy who?
James Braddock, who's
Oh yeah, yeah,
oh
yeah,
yeah, he's the Cinderella Man, an unexpected guy to win the heavyweight championship.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, that was a long time ago, but
Oh yeah, yeah, it was.
yeah. I
I'm
mean, you
reading
had
this
that.
book on him right now.
You had that Japanese guy who knocked out James Kirkland in one round, and
Oh yeah, yeah, that was, and it was a jab too, like
yeah,
or something
and
like that.
that's pretty much all that he did. I mean, he didn't have any other major victories.
Yeah,
So
it didn't even look like it landed that hard. The
yeah,
shots that were
Ishida.
taking
Yeah,
him
his
down,
name. Yeah, his name is Ishida. Yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, Sheeta. Yeah, I remember that. That was pretty funny. Old
Yeah,
James Kirkland. Yeah, and this is when he was, but he had come back again from, I guess, being out for a while, and he didn't have Van Wolf in his corner.
yeah.
Uh, and so I don't know what was going through his head at
So
that
I
particular
guess
time.
yeah, that was just bad timing for him. Yeah.
Yeah, without a doubt, there.
But you forgot one of the comeback kings, or you can call him a retirement king too, Sugar Ray Leonard. He he
Oh,
kind of
Sugar
had
Ray.
more retirements than big fights almost.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, Sugar Ray Leonard. Yeah, of course. Probably one of the most popular boxers the
Yeah,
world has seen. Of course, he's able to generate a lot of buzz, and he was the sort of face of boxing at one point.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, he had a detached retina. I forget which fight in which he suffered it, which initially led him to, I guess, retire that first time
yeah. It
around.
was like 1982 or something.
Yeah, yeah, it was the detached retina, and
It was against
I guess
Kevin.
he
I
had
don't know.
surgery.
Yeah,
Yeah, he had surgery, and I guess just based on such, he ended up calling it quits. But he was what at that particular time he was 20, like mid 20s, right, or something of that
Yeah,
nature.
yeah, it was like maybe 26 or something. But then
Yeah,
he
yeah.
came
So
back maybe 2 years later. Then he just had a couple fights and then he retired again. And
yeah,
then,
yeah,
of course,
and
came
then
back to fight Marvelous Marvin.
yeah, and that's probably his most famous sort of retirement comeback, taking on Marvelous
Yeah,
Marvin Hagler in a fight that will forever be disputed. I, for one, I thought that Sugar Ray won, but
yeah,
hey,
me
I can't
too.
argue with those who thought that Hagler won. It was kind
It
of
was it was rather close, but I thought, yeah, Sugar Ray won. I mean, I thought definitely by 2 rounds or something.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I think looking back, if Hagler could have done anything different, he probably would have started a bit faster. I think that's
yeah.
probably what led to him not winning because I thought he closed very good and he seemingly was
Mm,
starting to get to Leonard with some of his punches. But it was just those early rounds where I don't
yeah,
know what it was. Maybe it was just a moment or what, but he just wasn't really throwing a lot, doing
yeah.
much.
First 5 rounds, I think he looked totally confused or whatever, and
Yeah.
didn't do much. And
And then a fire lit under him from
yeah,
there.
but of course, Leonard had a really good chin too. So
Oh yeah, yeah, that is true.
even if Hagler had started, more aggressively, it wouldn't have been so easy to get Leonard out of there, of course.
Yeah, I
So
had heard that even though uh, Leonard had retired prior to this comeback against Hagler, and I don't know where I heard this from, but I had heard that there was like a behind closed doors type of match that he did with I don't know someone maybe
oh yeah,
to
yeah,
kind
I
of get
read
himself
about it.
prepared.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He did have, or maybe even several such. I don't know, at least one. Yeah,
Yeah, so
fight.
he had himself prepped. So we weren't just getting a Leonard who just woke up
Yeah,
5 months earlier and said, "I want to make a comeback." You know, we were getting. He was definitely getting himself prepped for this comeback.
yeah, definitely he had to because he was fighting this wrecking machine, of a man. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and that Leonard Hagler fight had huge implications, but because Hagler was so disgusted about the loss that he ended up just not fighting again at all. Though he was a
yeah.
guy who actually, I guess, retired and stayed retired in a sense.
Yeah, he was like 33, I think. So he wasn't really, in the right age or in the, yeah, usual retiring age. So,
Yeah, yeah. So that was a good example. And then Ray, continued to try and apply his trade until it was just pretty much a sad state of affairs. Him with Terry Norris
yeah,
being the one fight where he yeah, he was just a shell of himself. And of
yeah,
course,
it was a very bad decision to take that fight. I mean, that guy, Norris, was so fast and so
yeah.
good. And yeah,
And to even think that he could still go on, he decided to jump in against Hector Camacho as well, which
yeah,
was his last fight, which is another fight that he should have never taken and only just
yeah,
added a couple of losses to his record. And for that matter, yeah, I don't know what was it. Well, he mentioned last night, as a matter of fact, on his on the Tyson Jones card, he was one of the commentators. He mentioned that when he came back, he wasn't doing it for financial reasons. He thought that he was going to still be able to pretty much go in there and
yeah.
compete, and he
So
was
it was just
proven
like the
wrong.
love of the game that made him
Yeah, yeah,
come
yeah.
back.
He mentioned that last night, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, that's funny because that's the same year when Donald Curry also had a short comeback in '97.
Oh, Donald
Uh,
Curry. See, I haven't seen a ton of Donald Curry. I know he was
yeah,
highly regarded. Um,
and he was also kind of retired by Terry Norris. So there's a
Yeah,
similarity.
Terry Norris. Yep, yeah. Yeah, that is. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I do remember though. Yeah, people having high regards for Curry Norris as well, who was the explosive fighter.
Yeah,
Um, I haven't seen a ton of his stuff. I've seen some stuff. But yeah, I know that he was popular. Terrible Terry.
yeah, it was pretty awesome. It's just that he didn't have the best chin, so that was his weakness. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, otherwise he would have really like ruled. I mean, he would have been really hard to beat. Mm.
yeah. That's the story of some fighters. Those whiskers, and some people are just born
Yeah,
with them. I guess. You know, there's some who can go through a dumpster fire and
yeah,
come out unscathed, and then those that yeah, it's just you know,
yeah. It's pretty amazing how big that difference can be. You know, some guy just gets a big one on the chin, he's gone. The others,
yeah,
some other guy just goes back at it.
yeah. You can hit them with everything, and they never
Yeah,
go away. That's crazy. And
yeah,
those are the ones you definitely have to pay close attention to in these fights because sometimes if you're officiating, you know, you could let it continue to go on, and yeah, these guys won't slow down, but that long term, you know, probably not a good thing.
yeah. I mean, George Foreman, he was one of those guys. He could
Oh
he
yeah,
could hit with almost anything. He just come back. And,
yeah, especially that plus 40s George is like he
yeah,
was taking some hellacious shots, especially from the
yeah,
likes of Holyfield and such. But man, he even yeah, Tommy Morrison was able to catch him with
yeah.
some
And
stuff.
Alex Stewart, he just kind of really made his face a mess. That fight was really
Yeah,
weird.
yeah, George. Yeah, you're right. He had a beard on him for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, cool, good stuff. We've been running here for a good
Like
little period.
an hour and a half, I think.
Hour and
Something.
a half, maybe a good time. I had said I was gonna try to keep it to 30 minutes. Who would have thought?
Oh,
But
oh,
yeah, definitely a good discussion. My mouse
yeah,
is acting funny again.
yeah. I love doing this.
So cool. Well, we can call this one a wraps. I'll
Yeah.
get that video to you a little later on.
All right.
So yeah, and we can do this again. We'll start thinking about our next topics, and we can make it happen another time.
Yeah, definitely.
All
I'll
right.
start thinking right now.
Sounds good then. Well, definitely have a good one then, Slavin. And
Yeah,
I'll be
you too.
chatting back with you.
All right. That
All right.
that's that's a deal.